Good morning, everybody. It is almost time for GoJo and Golic. Here's a little preview of what you have to look forward to on today's show. So Nicole Auerbach, she's going to join us live from the City of Love. We're going to talk to her about all things Olympics as she joins us from Paris. Plus, football is back, baby. Hall of Fame game, Texans and Bears. It is tonight. We're going to talk all about it. And Team USA, they came out, they did their thing. They beat South Sudan, although they did not cover the spread. All that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jesse Cofield, and Jason Fitz sitting in for my father, Mike Golic Sr. today. Got a great show for you. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. All the great things that Jesse mentioned coming up in the show today will also roll along and finish up our NFC division previews today, which we're excited about. Look ahead at some of that future Olympic basketball problems that seem to pop up every time we talk about minutes from one of these games. But Jason Fitz, you guys can catch over at Yahoo Sports, doing a great job hosting there. You can also catch him sitting in and playing fiddle for Collective Soul if you're in Connecticut at the Xfinity Theater tonight as they open up for Hootie and the Blowfish. So, Jason, have you rosined up your bow and are you ready to play that fiddle hard?
No, I will, this afternoon, I'll run it once or twice with the guys and then we'll get out there and we'll do some dirty work. It's going to be fun. This is the angle though, Mike. So I've got a buddy that's been the guitar player for Collective Soul for several years. We met in Nashville when he was touring with somebody else. We've kept in touch. He graciously asked me to come out and play, which I cannot wait for. It's going to be great. But also Edwin and Hootie are on this show. So I feel like, once I'm backstage, I feel like I'm going to go up to Edwin because look, Edwin had some songs with the saxophone that at this point, I don't think he's carrying a sax player out on the road with him. So why not have the fiddle? And then I'm gonna go up to your boy, Darius. I'm just going to walk up, maybe slap him on the butt and be like, hey man, you, me, wagon wheel, let's go. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm going to try and take over the whole show.
Boy, all right, so there we go. Jason Fitz, who someone graciously decided to let in and come be a part of this show, scratched the itch of playing the fiddle that used to be a part of his former life, now is going to try and take over the entire concert at Xfinity. So if you thought you were going to go there to hear Let Her Cry or any of the other Hootie songs, now you're just going to hear some guy jumping in, shouting fiddle over the top of it, at the top of his little fiddle lungs.
I also like how you're just like, I'll just like dust the old thing off later. Like, what a flex, Fitz. You're just going to walk in and just like nail it.
Oh, no, don't feed him like this. Don't do this.
Look,
I'm impressed.
I'm just saying, there are very few things in the world that I can truly look at and say, hey, I am great at this, right? That's the one thing. Like when I sat in with Jordan Davis, a couple of weeks ago, I got the songs the day before in the morning of. I listened to him a couple times, played him a couple times, went to sound check. We did it as a band twice, and then walked out on stage in front of 12,000 people. I've been playing the violin for over 40 years. I'm old, right? So like, it's just part of who I am in life. Like it's that part's easy. And Mike, look, you of all people understand that I am, by my nature, I'm a grinder. Like the minute I'm in the door, if the door's cracked open, I'm going to try and get more. That's who I am. Like I don't sit still very often. And it's not like, Darius, they can't do wagon wheel. There's no way Hootie's not going to play wagon wheel, right? Because it was a huge hit for Darius. They don't carry a fiddle player. Come on. Mike's looking around. You don't think they play wagon wheel?
You know what? I put in some calls yesterday to make sure that this doesn't happen. So we'll see how my sway is with Darius Rucker still in this day and age as we get ready for another DFS season where I am going to bury him and the rest of my family. We've had an ongoing DraftKings DFS league for about 3 or 4 years now that I am currently the champion of, and I'm looking to go back to back in. So no, Fitz, you're not getting invited. I see that look. The answer's no. The answer's no.
Because you are a coward. You are a coward, and you know that you're going to have to tell the world that you got your butt kicked by a fiddle player if you put me in that league. I would absolutely destroy you, and I would own you in the group chat at the same time.
No, that's the thing I risk, is having to add you to the group chat that right now is a fun place full of smack talking and then would sound like an episode of the Muppets Christmas special if we invited you in.
Wow. You know what? All I hear there is I bring Christmas joy to every day. That's all I hear out of that, Mike.
You know what I hear is Jason Fitz considers himself an expert in the fiddle and wants to lend his services to others. I, on the other hand, was an expert in one thing when it came to football, and that was participating in the offseason program and getting cut at the end of preseason. So we are right in my wheelhouse as we head into the Hall of Fame game tonight, where we will have the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans representing as we head into the Hall of Fame weekend. We'll talk and look ahead about some of the legends that are getting enshrined this summer in Canton. But Fitz, the Bears and the Texans heading into this game. We talk about the draft all the time as this hope merchant, this idea in this place where every team and every fan base gets to feel like their team has a chance going into the upcoming season. Now, we're not ready to pick up the pen and start grading the final test, but we're starting to see our first little looks at all these players coming out. So I'll go on the field in a second, but I'm curious for you. You've been a lifelong diehard Raiders fan for so long. What for you do you watch for during the preseason when it comes to your favorite team and trying to figure out the upcoming season?
The funny thing is when your team stinks, like when your team is great, preseason does truly mean nothing. I get that. When your team stinks, you're looking for any reason to have hope, right? And so one of the worst Raiders seasons I can ever remember in my life, they went 4-0 in the preseason. And I remember ending that preseason saying, you know what? Things aren't going to be that bad. It's going to be just fine, because you're just looking for any reason to look around and say, hey, this season might work out better than we think. So, frankly, the Hall of Fame game for most of us is just about the release of finally having football in front of us, right? Like we'll watch anything at this point. We're going to watch the entirety of a bunch of guys that we're not even going to know who they are in 3 years. That's reality. But for teams, for fans of the teams, you're looking for some reason to sit there and say, hey, I think we're going to be better than the national media tells me we're going to be. And that comes in the form of just the basics. Can you complete passes? Does it look like there's rhythm on the offense? Does the defense look like they can play it all? Knowing full well that there's no scheming happening on either side. It doesn't matter, Mike. You just want to have something you can cling to that's like, hey, this might be the one. This season might be the year we shock the world.
Yeah, it really is in no way predictive of what's to come, right? You have teams with wildly different approaches where, like tonight, the Chicago Bears won't play their starters. Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick, not playing in this game. So you have teams like the Los Angeles Rams doing the same thing. Sean McVay doesn't even sound like he's barely going to coach in the preseason. He's going to give a lot of that chance and responsibility to the other coaches on his staff. It's a development process for almost everyone in the roster. So as we're sitting here all trying to find individual performances, a diamond in the rough, a player that pops in the preseason that might be able to help your squad, it's a reminder there's levels to this, because usually, Jason, when we see that guy in the last preseason game go off, a running back or a receiver or a player that winds up with a bunch of tackles, they're usually the guy that's going to help fill out the special teams roster or maybe come in and supplement a back every once in a while, taking a few carries off someone on third down. So it's a good reminder that you may not get as much functional football out of this, but you do get to see how your organization does everything. And there's always that phrase inside the building, and I'm sure it was the same for you in music. It was how you do the little things is how you do everything. And so how these teams approach it and what's taught throughout all these rooms to the young guys is going to show up on the field at some point. It's your first chance to get a look at some of your young rookies that might see the field over the course of this and just see what the picture looks like for them. See how fast the game looks for them. And of course, just make sure they stay healthy. For the love of God, just stay healthy.
But you also make a good point that we all need to remember as fans watching preseason football. Every single fan base is going to freak out in the last week of the preseason about some random cut. They're going to be like, oh my God, how could you cut this wide receiver that had 8 touchdowns in the preseason? Well, it's like, well, the guy's 5'5" and weighs 160 pounds. He was never going to play in the league. He just had fun in the preseason, right? Like, and then we freak out and say, oh, this is the sign that things aren't going well. Well, if your team stinks, whoever you cut at the end probably is not costing you a Super Bowl, right? Like, they're not costing you the playoffs versus the non-playoffs in these situations. We all need to relax a little bit and understand that preseason football is a lot like video game football. It feels like football. It scratches the itch of football, but it means nothing towards what we're actually going to see in week 1. So that guy that gets cut, it's tragic, but I don't think that it's the killer of a season.
By and large, because the reason fans get excited is we have enough tales of undrafted free agents who go on to make teams in the NFL who can work their way into Hall of Fame careers, who can become incredibly productive players. You know, Ramon Foster, who we've had on this show a bunch, undrafted guy. Ryan Clark on ESPN, undrafted player that went on to be a part of a Super Bowl effort and plenty of things. So you can find incredibly compelling starters through the course of the preseason. It's just statistically a lot less likely. Those stories are so few and far between that you've really got to have an eye for that. And that's something, quite honestly, Fitz, like most things, and we've talked about on this show with Dad plenty, the way joint practices have really superseded the preseason games in terms of the team's process of developing and finding talent in their roster. So much more of that's going to pop during practice. Really, from a player standpoint, what you're trying to do in the preseason is you're trying to pop just enough to earn more reps the following week in practice. Like, if you're a player on the back end of the roster like I was going into these games, you're going in with a very limited rep count. You don't really know when you're going to get in. I always hated playing football, especially in the offensive line like this. Like, it's one thing. Positions on defense, they rotate guys in all the time. You're used to being over on the sideline, watch, go in and try and make plays in a handful of reps that you get. A lot of young defensive players come on that way. Bryce HoF, who's getting ready to go play for the Eagles, was a situational, rotational pass rush player with the New York Jets, and now is going to get a larger sample size for a lot of his work. On the offensive line, it's totally different than that. You're used to, if you're in there, you're playing almost every series. You're getting used to communicating with your guys. There's a reward for continuity. And so I hated having to go into the end of games, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's how life goes in this. And you're trying to make enough plays in that limited set of plays to then have the coaches look at that and say the next week, hey, we need to give this guy more run in practice. Now that we've allocated 8 reps for the 1s and 4 reps for the 2s and 2 for the 3s, hey, we got to bump this guy up from the 3s to the 2s, or the 2s and mix him in with some of the 1s. That's really the aim if you're a player coming out of any of these games is, can I make the play that gets me noticed enough? And in my case, in the offensive line, it was usually, hey, I got to make sure I'm the guy trying to dump someone through the echo of the whistle, trying to go hard so that I actually do flash on film. Like, I had vets tell me, hey, you got to be the bleep hole that's pushing guys over the pile and borderline starting fights, because that's going to pop enough on tape to make them go, oh, well, who's 67? What's his deal?
And I love that, by the way. And I think it's important to note here, when I say it won't make a difference, I think guys that can get cut can go on to have great careers. I think most of the bad teams that are cutting those players are not one player away from 10, 11 wins. So that's part of that difference there. But when you talk about the reps, I do think it's important. And look, I've been lucky enough over the last year to be around a lot of different camps and a lot of different practice situations that I've seen. And the one thing that stunned me that I don't think we really know, like even if you played at some level, when you get to the highest level and you see how few reps there are for a lot of guys, it is pretty stunning that it's like they're running a rotation at running back and all of a sudden this running back may have not done anything. And now they get one rep and it's their first rep in 3 minutes and cold. They got to come in and do something so good that the running back positional coach actually recognized it and is like, that was a great rep. And then what happens if that just happens to be a bad rep? Well, they still go to the back of the line and they got to wait another 3 minutes to get the next rep in. And I did watch that thinking, man, this is so different when you see it up close and in person, because you realize that there's a fine line for every guy on figuring out where's pushing too much, what is doing too much, where's listening versus letting your body do what your body does. Like there's so much that goes into this practice time. I see more as I've been around more practices in the last year. I see more of why guys get pent up, why there's so much anger at times. Like I see more why there's so much desperation in early preseason football guys from guys trying to hit tape. It makes sense when you think about the limited reps.
Yeah, it's that old military saying, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. Like if you're out there trying to push, it's not usually going to go well for you. Football is a sport more than most other things where you can actually, we talk about this relative to golf all the time, you can rage your way through football. Anger can be a useful tool the way it isn't in a sport like golf or some of the individual sports. But yeah, in these cases, you're trying to fight that. You're trying to fight the urge to do the math in your head all the time during camp of, all right, well, they've got X amount of guys at my position on the roster right now, and they need to cut down to this, and so I just need to be better than so-and-so, when the rule always is, you're not playing against the guys on your team. You're playing against every guy at your position all around the league, and quite honestly, some other positions based on how much they want to keep on the roster and how they decide to construct that based on what they need. So it's all interesting. I have a lot of respect and empathy for the guys that are getting ready to go out there and clang and bang tonight and try and make it happen. It is, especially for the guys that are undrafted or the back end of the draft, back end of the roster, it's a daunting uphill battle that very few survive on the other side, and the ones that do will always have my undying respect.
For anybody that does anything, just imagine, I don't care if you're a used car salesman. I don't imagine if you were sitting there and the owner of the dealership is standing right there. And as you walk up you're just walking up to the person, they're watching the walk and they're deciding if you get to continue to talk to the person. And then once you start talking every single sentence, they're deciding if you get another sentence. And then finally you get the opportunity to pick the car. And you do a single thing wrong in any of those, you go all the way back to the back of the line and you may not be able to feed your family. That's what football players deal with in practice that I think is really stunning. Is like one little misstep and it's like, nope, go to the back of the line. That could actually change impacts the player's ability to feed their family. It's wild to me how much pressure is on these guys.
It's also just wild. You show up to stretching lines and it's like, oh, there's 4 guys gone that you were hanging out with yesterday and now they don't play for this team anymore. In some cases, don't play football anymore. In other cases, they actually go on to Hall of Fame careers, Fitz, and that's the other cool part of this weekend is we obviously get to look at the Hall of Fame class as well coming up with some of the all-time great players that are going to be enshrined this year. And I don't know about for you because, again, you're considerably older than me. You're like a vampire, but for me, this Hall of Fame class is really a lot of the guys that started to star for me from like the end of my childhood into young adulthood. When you look at this class here, Dwight Freeney, Devin Hester, Andre Johnson, Julius Peppers, Patrick Willis. So it's a group of studs. Is there anyone in this class, Fitz, that particularly stood out to you or meant something to you that's getting ready to go this weekend?
So there's 2 guys, and I think, by the way, thanks for the sneaky vampire. I would like to be called a zaddy just once on this show. All right, so there's 2 guys that really stand out to me. That part of this is I'm going to speak to like a Madden generation, right? Like you knew when you were playing Madden that if you were taking on Dwight Freeney, you were done, right? Like he just was able to get to anybody from anywhere. You had to run everything away from him on Madden. Like I laugh about that because that echoed what Sundays felt like. Dwight Freeney was just always in the backfield. And then Devin Hester, obviously, like Devin Hester was such a just revolutionary game breaker that that was the sort of guy that everybody wanted to have. And I feel like for years, we started after that overdrafting somebody that had kick and punt return ability simply because you hoped you could get your Devin Hester. So those 2 guys, I think the impact of what you saw every Sunday, the way you felt it in pop culture, even it resonates different. And you are right. Like the classes come in now, and I feel like all of them are at an age where I remember being, formative. Like I'm not a kid watching these. I'm a grown ass man watching these players play. That's where we are now with the Hall of Fame. Thanks for the reminder, Mike.
Yeah, no, I just had to remind you that the sands of time are coming for you as the darkness closes in. But yeah, honestly, two of those were the ones that stuck out to me too. My high school football coach was actually on the staff at Bloomfield High School. Dwight Freeney's from Connecticut. He's one of the very few guys that we can point to in Central Connecticut that's accomplished at this level in the National Football League. And yeah, he was one of one in an era where we talk about Aaron Donald defying the laws of physics on the interior defensive line as an undersized defensive tackle. Dwight Freeney was 6'1" playing defensive end, ruining lives for people. Has a spin move that probably won't ever be replicated. We won't see someone go to the well on that nearly as much, and was just a nightmare. He made it intolerable for offensive tackles, even at that size, going against some of the mountains we see on the outside. And Devin Hester, it bears repeating, man. I know a lot of people wrung their hands and waxed about what a special teams player specifically should have as a future in the Hall of Fame. This guy's rookie year, again, if anyone's forgotten this, like it's one of the indelible highlights and moments in football of my lifetime. The man's rookie year in the Super Bowl with the Bears. His rookie year where he led the NFL in punt and kick returns, had 3 punt return touchdowns, 2 kick return touchdowns, and a touchdown on a missed field goal, returned the opening kickoff of the Super Bowl for a touchdown. Think about that. They had tape of this guy from the whole season going, that's the most dangerous return man in the league. And they still gave him an opportunity to, tried to cover him, and then ultimately failed to keep him out of the end zone in a game where that's the moment. I mean, kickoff at the Super Bowl is one of these like sports culture moments that everyone always lionizes, and that man made it sing in a way that very few could as a rookie in a stadium he knew all too well from his time at Miami. So I don't know. He was one Fitz I banged the drum for a lot and was really glad to see going into this weekend.
Yeah, I remember sitting at a Dave & Buster's watching the Super Bowl, and that opening kickoff return goes, and then all of a sudden the immediate thing is all the Bears fans are like, we're gonna win the Super Bowl, and the other half, like Colts fans, were just losing their minds to the whole process. Amazing to see how the game played out. But you're right, like I think at the time Devin Hester and his speed, his ability to hit top speed so quickly was what Tyreek Hill is now. And just people didn't have any way to stop it. They didn't have any way to prevent it. He did what he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted. It was amazing to watch.
Jason Fitz watching the Super Bowl at Dave & Buster's. The least surprising sentence on earth. Coming up next, a cooler sentence. Nicole Auerbach's going to join us from Paris to talk about Olympic swimming next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jason Fitz, Jesse Cofield, and delighted to head across the pond for a little bit of Olympic coverage. Help Nicole Auerbach, kind enough to join us here, senior writer at The Athletic, college football insider for NBC, and Olympic swimming writer and reporter as well. You've seen plenty of her great work leading up to the games, and now as things have rolled along there. So, Nicole, good morning from over here, good afternoon over there. How's it been in Paris so far for you?
It's been awesome. Was really excited about this Olympics. It's my third, but it just felt like it was going to be a show. Like, we've seen it. All of the venues are these incredible historic landmarks, basically. Everything looks incredible, looks awesome. I haven't run into Snoop just yet, but I anticipate that will happen at some point because he seems to be everywhere across all the venues. But, I'm coming off like one of the all-time swimming nights in Olympic history. I my juices are still going. Like, I'm still coming down from that. It took a while to fall asleep last night because it's just not every day that you see something as incredible as what Leon Marchand did last night. Plus, you throw in Katie Ledecky now having a tie for the most gold medals for an American woman in history. I mean, it was just an unbelievable night, and that's what I love about the Olympics. You just never know when you're going to see history.
So since you've been to multiple Olympics, seeing Marchand do what he's doing on his home turf, essentially, how much different has that felt in the room?
So the best description I've heard about what it actually feels like, because I know, I'm sure you guys can see on TV how loud it is, but like the whole arena swells and there's this like rhythm to it, especially when he's in the breaststroke, because they're all chanting when his head pops up. But Carson Foster, who got bronze in the 400 IM, said it felt like a soccer stadium. And I feel like that is the perfect description of this. I've seen people say it's like an SEC football game. Like, there's just something that is like feral about the crowd, and you have banners and signs, and it's unreal. It really is so cool because I was excited to see him swim just because it was going to be his home Olympics coming into all of this. But I didn't really think about just how loud it was going to get and how it was going to feel every single time, even when he has a morning prelim swim. So it was just incredible over the last 50 when he came back to win the 200 fly. I don't think I've ever experienced a sporting moment like that.
As you mentioned, wins the 200-meter fly in dramatic fashion, wins the 200-meter breast 2 hours later. So 2 gold medals in a 2-hour span, a daunting stretch there. Nicole, based on this performance that we've already seen, one that, as you wrote about before the Olympics, based on who his coach is, the former coach of the great Michael Phelps as well, and his pedigree over here swimming at ASU in the U.S., winning 11 national titles in 3 years, where is he already in terms of the all-time accomplishments of men's swimmers in the Olympics?
Well, we'll start with the fact that no one has ever medaled in both a breaststroke and a butterfly event in the same Olympics, just because like a lot of people don't swim those two events. So he didn't just medal, he won gold in both, and he did it on the same night. It's been almost 50 years since someone has won 2 individual golds on the same night, again, because people look at the schedule and figure out which events they're going to swim in order to avoid having to do something like he just did in the same night and then have to qualify in that in prelims and semifinals to do that double 3 different times. So already rarefied air, but also he's only the fourth swimmer ever to have male swimmer ever to have at least 3 individual gold medals in the same Olympics. Like that's it. It's Spitz, it's Dressel, and it's Phelps. And Phelps did it twice. That's the group that he is already in. And by the way, he's going to be the heavy favorite to win the 200 IM later in this meet as well. So it's already an all-time performance. The only one I felt for sure he was going to win gold was the 400 IM. I was like, that is awesome. What a moment for France. And he is just creating new records, creating new moments. So he's unquestionably like the biggest star of the Olympics at his home Olympics. But he is doing things and living up to these expectations that we put on him, being coached by Michael Phelps' former coach. Like, I can't imagine anyone living up to them. And then he's not just doing that, but he's exceeding them and setting new records and new doubles and things that Michael Phelps never did.
So at the same time, outside of just Marchand, we've seen so much drama in this year's particular Olympics of swimming, all across men's and women's, people that missed the podium, people that got on the podium. For you, has there been a favorite moment that's not Marchand in this one?
Well, those are going to stand out head and shoulders above the rest. But, I'm going to give a shout to Katie Ledecky in the mile. Now, this is a race that is very long. It is very boring. A lot of people do not like to swim it. People definitely don't like to swim it like late in their 20s, like when it hurts more and recovery takes longer. And she loves this thing. She loves this event. She pushed for it to be included in the Olympics. This is only the second Olympics that women have been able to swim the mile. And she is rightfully so the Olympic record holder. She has the 20 fastest times in the world ever in this event. She is not going to stop swimming it. And it's so cool to watch her basically lap the field. Like I know on TV, they like had to find a different camera angle in order to include all of the other swimmers like in the same shot while she was swimming. But when you're watching it in person too, there's just like, it's so rhythmic and you're watching her, you're trying to figure out who's going in which direction because she's constantly swimming basically like against the grain with all of the other swimmers going in a different direction. So it was awesome because you had multiple swells of the crowd on that one because a lot of American fans, everyone wants to see the greatest female swimmer ever. So when Katie finishes and she's just kind of like sitting there looking back, waiting for someone else to touch the wall because it's always so long, you also had a crazy close finish for second place and it went to a French swimmer. So then the arena again went crazy. So that was a really, really cool moment. And then I'll also say like the relays are always really fun. So we still have got a bunch of those to come, including the medley relay, which is actually my favorite to watch because each swimmer swims a different stroke. So I think we'll have a bunch more moments, but it was hard to top the few moments that we got all last night alone.
I can confirm, as the older brother of a collegiate swimmer, there were a lot of people that would maybe not have their best effort for the mile when asked to participate in that event to ensure that they would never have to swim that event again. So Katie Ledecky is grinding through an absolute bear of a time and grinding through. She is dominating it in a way that no one ever has and no one ever will again after this, more than likely. Nicole, zooming out more, we know you've been there to cover swimming and seen so much great action in the pool. Is there anything else that stuck out from the games over there that's especially created some buzz around where you guys are amongst some of the other events that we've had going on, whether it's been basketball, track and field, any of the very sassy shooters that I've seen make it to the Twitter timeline for you?
Yeah, the shooters seem incredible. Apparently that's like 4 hours from here, so there's no chance to just like sneak over and get to know them and ask them to become my best friends. But I will say my favorite moments so far, obviously we're all looking at this through like an American tint, but the bronze medals, the men's gymnastics team final, and then the women's rugby medal, like those are so cool. And I think that this is why bronze is so different than silver. Obviously we celebrate gold, but silver, like you are the first runner-up, you are the first person who did not win. And bronze, you either haven't gotten a medal in a really long time or never have before, and you get one. And it's that versus getting nothing. And so like the celebrations have just been so, so incredible. I will never forget Pommel Horse Guy. I will never forget him taking off those glasses and then immediately putting them back on and celebrating by raising them in his wrist. Like it was an incredible moment. And then rugby, so, so cool. Obsessed with Alana. Like it's just, it's so amazing to get those types of moments in sports that I would never have told you like a week ago that those would be the sports that I'd be glued to my screen watching from somewhere else in Paris to make sure I don't miss that moment. And so those are my favorite moments so far. I think that's why like we need to talk more about it, how great bronze is. Like we really, really do, because these have given us some of the most genuine and joyful celebrations so far.
You know what? I hadn't really thought about that. Have you gotten to
explore any of France though? Like, have you gotten to explore any Paris though? Like, have you got to hang out at all?
Yeah. So I came a couple days early, so I could just like go hang out at the cafes, do some shopping. It is as advertised. It's great. You know what I'm going to do today? Finally, I mean, all of the Parisians just kind of carry around baguettes all the time, like I just in case they get hungry throughout the day. I haven't done that yet, but I did get a tote bag that is like short and long, so it's a baguette tote bag. So I'm going to take it out. I'm going to go get 2 baguettes and bring them around with me and walk around. And maybe people will speak French to me because they won't think I'm American. And that is going to be my day ahead.
There we go. Well, in addition to following all of Nicole's great Olympic swimming coverage, make sure you follow Baguette Cam as she goes around later today to try and indoctrinate herself around France. Nicole, thanks so much. Enjoy your baguette and the rest of the Olympics, friend.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Jason Fitz here. And guys, we are continuing our preview of the NFC, going to the NFC West today with the San Francisco 49ers. And guys, they are plus 250, as you can see, to win the whole dang NFC. Okay, so they're the team to beat. We know that. But we also know that they have not been able to get over the hump and beat the Chiefs. So the question I have for you is, have they done enough this offseason, we think, to give them a fighting chance?
Yeah, Fitz, this is one of the rare teams where just by nature of existing, they've got a chance in their current form. We know for the 49ers, this year has an added level of urgency because it's the last year of Brock Purdy on a rookie deal before we start to blow up their salary cap with those big-time quarterback numbers. But they've had the roster for a while to get this done. They've had the coaching for a while to get this done. And right now, I know there's some conversation about Brock Purdy and his station in the NFL, but we saw last year he's more than good enough at quarterback. He's the best option they've had in the Shanahan years to go and get them over the mountaintop. They've just got a Patrick Mahomes problem, so I struggle to want to nitpick too much on this roster, Fitz. There are areas like complementary pass rushing to Nick Bosa. They're going to have to replace some stuff on the interior defensive line as well for a group that was a little less against the run last year. With that coordinator than they had been in seasons past. But offensively, even as they work out the Brandon Ayuk deal, overall, this roster should be, again, one of the best, if not the best in the NFL.
So the question of how do you get over the hump, to me, is in some ways so flawed, because the real answer is maybe a different overtime strategy. Like, how much would our approach to this entire conversation change based on one or two plays in the Super Bowl? And when we talk about getting over the hump, Mike, to me, it's like there is some value to better to be lucky than good. And sometimes you're just unlucky. And what the problem is we obsess about playoff results and we let that skew our regular season opinions. We do this with a ton of teams. We did it last year with the Buffalo Bills saying, well, you know, the Bills are going to stink this year because they lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs. The Bills turned out to have a good regular season, still couldn't get it done. That's fine. We do it with the Cowboys. Well, the Cowboys are going to stink this year because they lost in the playoffs. They've won 12 games 3 years in a row. Newsflash, the Cowboys are not going to stink. And we're doing the same thing with the 49ers now. It's like, well, I don't know, a lot of question marks. Are there? This is one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. It's still a roster with a ton of depth, and it's still a roster that has an absolutely great coach, right? So I look at all of this and say, is the sky falling for the 49ers? No. What do they have to do? They have to figure out how to make maybe two more plays in one game in February to change the entire narrative of the organization. And when you put it that way, like, I would keep running it back. I just keep doing what I'm doing because I'm only one or two plays away from lifting the Lombardi. That is not sky is falling. We have problems. That is first world 1%er problems that most NFL fans could never even imagine.
It is, but that's the problem is starting next year, you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to pay this Monstars roster where you've got all pros on both sides of the ball at multiple positions in the same way. They're running into that now. I'm sure the impending Brock Purdy contract is part of the calculus they're making on a guy like Brandon Ayuk and the way that they approach some of these deals. They paid Christian McCaffrey. They decided, hey, we've seen since he came over, even in a league where we're unsure about running backs, he has unlocked something in the way that Kyle can call offense because of his versatility. That means we have to pay to keep him around as our quarterback becomes expensive. But for Brandon Ayuk, who I do think is in that same class of individually so unique in that offense and so productive individually, that you need to keep him around because he's not just a Shanahan scheme guy, but that is creeping into the equation is they're going to have to live life differently starting after this year. And while they've done that to an extent with Jimmy G before, it's not going to be nearly the bite out of their ass that I think Brock Purdy, if his stats are in line with what we saw last year, is going to be for them on the payroll next year.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong. And by the way, I say this loudly for everybody that says, well, Brock should take a discount because he's a system quarterback. In his career so far to date, according to overthecap.com, he's made lifetime earnings in the NFL of just under $2 million. After this year, he'll be at just under $3 million. The guy that's only made $3 million in his career is not the guy you want to come to and say, hey, could you leave $20 million on the table? I understand where it's going, but we really want, like, that's not the guy that you want to do that to. The guy that's your starting quarterback that still needs a roommate is probably not the guy you want to talk to about taking the discount. So I'm looking at Brock and I'm saying, dude, you should go get that bag. Go get paid. You've earned every single dime of it. I don't care about the conversation about system. Like, it doesn't really matter to me if he's a system quarterback, because in this system, the system that they couldn't make Trey Lance work in, the system they couldn't make Jimmy G work in this system, Brock Purdy is great for Kyle Shanahan. So the two of them can have their love languages going forward. They can figure out how to bond. And then the 49ers are just going to have to do what they've done for a long time. Draft well. Like, the 49ers have built a good roster, Mike. They'll be fine.
My biggest question for them, trenches along the line of scrimmage. We saw Brock Purdy get bothered by pressure last year. Getting Trent Williams back in camp going to go a long way for that. And then conversely, on the defensive front, they struggled to get after the quarterback in the ways that we're used to until they brought Chase Young over for the back half of the season, where obviously he was super productive. And they lose Eric Armstead this offseason, their defensive tackle, who was the most double-teamed player on that defensive line last year, generated a quarterback pressure percentage of 11.2%, which was his highest since 2019, and had been a huge difference on and off the field in terms of his production against the run. The 49ers rush defense with him on the field, 3.7 yards per carry, versus him off the field, 4.5 yards per carry. So almost a full yard more per carry when he was on and off the field. They're going to have to contend with that. Jason, the Seattle Seahawks have a whole lot of new going on. Mike McDonald, one of the hot new coaching names in the NFL. He brings over Ryan Grubb from the Washington Huskies offense from last season, and a whole new look group. So how much confidence do you have in them? They're the third favorite in the division to win right now. Do you think there's any chance this Seahawks outfit could get 2022 Geno Smith and make a playoff push?
No. But look, I think the Seahawks are in a really good situation for the next 3 years. It's going to take a minute, though. Like, what did we hear? You and I have talked about this before. What did we hear from Ravens players about McDonald's defense? It took a minute, right? Everybody had to figure out their roles. It's very complicated. Takes a lot of communication. I don't think you just suddenly make that happen. So even though I think Geno can play well, and I am interested to see what they look like with new coordinators and a new offense, they still have great weapons. I am genuinely curious if they can put together the defense they're going to have to put together quickly. I think it'll take a little time. So is Seattle going to be terrible? No. Is Seattle going to be a playoff team? In my mind, no. It takes too much to go right. That being said, I do love their weapons on offense, and I still have an absolute love relationship with their running back room.
One of the things Mike McDonald was lauded for was being a great teacher. So I will be curious how fast they're able to onboard this group. They draft Byron Murphy at defensive tackle, I'm sure to be the Justin Madubuike of this defense, a guy that, in that defense in Baltimore, those guys dropped out a bunch. They used their athleticism a ton, but Justin Madubuike had a career year last year, a year that got him richly paid in Baltimore in a system that creates a lot of great one-on-one matchups for these guys. They re-signed Julian Love at safety, which we saw how important that position was last year. Production from guys like Kyle Hamilton and Geno Stone in Baltimore there, but Fitz offensively, this team in terms of the types could not slot any better into what Ryan Grubb does on offense. For anyone, and you and I both cover college football, I got to call multiple Washington Huskies games in the last few years, and watching the way that Ryan Grubb moved pieces around to create matchup was always NFL stuff at the college level. And you look at what they were successful with at Washington, a quarterback who is a great arm that's capable of playing point guard at a high level, which is absolutely something Geno Smith can do. An offensive line last year in college football that won the Joe Moore Award, and this year now, provided, I know Abraham Lucas not being healthy to start the season, a little bit of a worry, but Charles Cross has been great throughout training camp so far, coming back at left tackle after they got beat up a little bit last year. And then the triplets in the wide receiver room of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba very much match the triplets that you had in the Washington receiver room, headlined by Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. So I think all of those guys going into a system where Ryan Grubb knows how to use that material at a high level is really encouraging, I think, for a group that could be pushing for a fringe playoff spot this year.
I remember last year watching a bunch of college football with friends, and there was a couple of games where people were screaming, how do you let Rome Odunze get that wide open? And my answer to that always was, nobody let him get that open. The entire scheme that happened pre-snap and then the work he did post-snap got him open. So you are 100% right. Creative use of getting wide receivers open is something that Washington offense knows a ton about. That is going to be exciting for Seattle. I still don't think they make a playoff push, but I think they're going to be good.
enjoy the pre-snap laser light show, Seattle fans. It's going to be a doozy. Coming up next, we will finish off the NFC West with the Arizona Cardinals and a very game Los Angeles Rams team next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Jason Fitz today in for seniors. So guys, we got some more details about the reworked Matthew Stafford contract with the Rams. So here are the details. $12.5 million signing bonus, $23.5 million guaranteed 2024 salary, a $4 million guaranteed March roster bonus. So basically, it's a $40 million one-year deal. So what's your take on this, guys? Is this the last ride for Stafford and the Rams here? He did give up those 2025 guarantees in this reworked contract.
Fitz, I was a little surprised by this, just given what the union with Stafford and McVay yielded this team. Obviously a Super Bowl first and foremost, but we saw what the back half of last year looked like when this quarterback is healthy. I understand that's always an if. He's 36 and not getting any younger, but I am a little surprised that they seem to have put all their chips into this season, even though I think they've got a team that could be absolutely should be a top 5 offense. I won't say could be. This should be a top 5 offense in the NFL. And if some of the young pieces on their D-line hit, Fitz, I think this could be a dark horse team primed for a deep playoff run.
Look, I agree with you that, by the way, I'm done betting against the Rams. Every time we feel like we're going to bet against the Rams, all they do is shock us. I'm tired of losing money betting against the Rams. So I'm out on that. So I'm betting on the Rams at this point. But what I do think is interesting is it's fair to say over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of conversations about where everybody's heart is. For years, it was, is McVay going to keep coaching? How much does Aaron Donald want to stick around? Does Stafford want to stick around? These were real conversations that were happening. To me, when I saw all of this rework, what I really thought of was the very thing you mentioned, was the bond between McVay and Stafford. To me, this tells me that the two guys that are unionized together, like they are in this marriage, are looking at it and saying, let's just go to year. Let's just make this life. Let's figure out what we want after the end of the season. And if things are really building and we're having a great time, now we have flexibility. We can do a better contract for you or a more reasonable contract for the team. We can figure out every year where we want to go. Because I don't believe Sean McVay at this point in his life has given any indication that he wants to press restart at the quarterback position. That's a hell of an iffy proposition. We all know that. And the Rams haven't done anything to really address the quarterback future. So this move allows McVay and Stafford to be together in one and united in a let's just take it year by year approach, which is great for them and horrifying for fans of the organization.
Yeah, I do wonder what the motivator is. Maybe it's Stafford at this point, wondering, hey, do I want to keep going and putting in the work necessary to be the guy at this level year after year? We'll see what happens, but it does put a lot of importance on this year. Thankfully, this roster is sick, especially on offense now. You've got a healthy Cooper Kupp going into training camp with Puka Nacua that burst on the scene the way that he did last year. Demarcus Robinson and what he did. They bring Jordan Whittington out of Texas, who I think can be productive in that wide receiver room. And then they just decided to go as close to copy-paste as you can get for Kyron Williams in the draft this year with Blake Corum out of Michigan behind an offensive line that added more to the beef. Jonah Jackson comes over from Detroit and joins Steve Avila, who's going to move over to center after a great rookie season last year. Fitz, you combine this with one of the best play callers in the NFL who decided, hey, all this stuff about us spreading out and throwing the football, everything that was billed when Stafford came over to help them win that Super Bowl, we're going to run through an MFer's face, to quote someone else that used to live in this division, and that's exactly how they wanted to live last year, and it's why I think as long as the core of this roster stays healthy, I mean, hell, Kyron Williams almost led the league in rushing basically in 12 games last year. I think there's still more of a ceiling for them to find, and it's going to make it a nightmare for opposing defenses. It's just on the other side. Hey, Aaron Donald doesn't live here anymore. So can Ernest Jones, who's the leader of that defense, help bring along Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, this young defensive line that had some guys like Kobe Turner pop last year, but is going to need a lot of young dudes to shoulder a load and help offset Aaron in the aggregate early.
I talked to Jared a couple of times last year throughout the course of his journey in the season. And you just want to talk about somebody that, and for anyone that doesn't know Jared Verse's story, go back and watch it, because it's really remarkable to see how he got himself to Florida State and the things that he worked on while he was at Florida State. You talk to people around that program, they'll tell you that day one, he's going to come in and be as impactful as a defensive lineman can be, because he's got that whatever it factor of work ethic, that love of the game, all those cheesy cliche things that we talk about with football. But Jared Verse is also a wildly talented prospect. Like when we look at his numbers last year, which did at times drop off, I would just ask everybody to look at the way they lined up against him. You talk a lot about this, Mike, but my God, the amount of help that they were giving. I mean, Jared Verse at times was facing triple teams and was still disrupting the pocket. So I think Verse comes in and is an immediate impact player. It is curious to see what impact no Aaron Donald means to the second layer of defense, but I absolutely love the fact that they get two guys that communicate well, that know each other, that have played together in college, that can really support each other in the journey of becoming pros in Fisk and Verse. I think that was a home run draft for the Rams.
Yeah, I would agree. That continuity and familiarity there to go along with Byron Young, who was great last year. Cam Curl, who they're really excited about in camp, coming over from Washington in that secondary alongside Tre'Davious White, who comes over from Buffalo, who, if he can stay healthy, let's see what he can accomplish there. The defense is a question mark. I will grant you that. They're the second favorite in this division. But, man, if the defense gets to really ground level and can be productive in that area, I think this offense is good enough to get them to an NFC championship. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. The same cannot be said, Jason, for the Arizona Cardinals. The final team on this one, certainly the longest odds in this division. I don't think that's the measure of success for them, but year two, where Kyler Murray will now be fully healthy, going into the season with Drew Petzing in this offense, can they take the next step forward now that they've added Marvin Harrison Jr.? What does success look like in 2024 for this Arizona Cardinals team, Jason?
6 wins, 7 wins, but it feels like they're building forward. They got a lot of holes on the defensive side of the ball, Mike. Like, I know we love offense, but the Cardinals defense looks like it could be just an abject disaster. And offensively, I do think that there's at least a pressure conversation to have. Like, we've talked a lot about CJ Stroud and his success and what that means for the way every quarterback's going to be viewed out of that class, right? But there is an element to me of, it's not just about Marvin Harrison Jr., who we all agree is going to be an incredible prospect that everybody feels like he's just going to be can't miss an epic wide receiver. That is true. But there are going to be side eyes to the success or lack thereof, of every quarterback that was selected after that pick in the draft. Because Kyler Murray got the investment, he got the vote of confidence, he has everything from the Cardinals organization, and they got him more weapons. He has to come out and play. Like, he's got to come out and be very good for everybody just to calm down a little bit. I just feel like the Cardinals last year, we gave a lot of credit early in the season. Well, they're playing hard. They still just lost a lot of bad games. They lost a lot of games for a bad football team. They've got to show that they actually have foundational building blocks moving forward. Makes me a little nervous for Arizona. I think 6 wins would be 6 wins, and it feels like they're on the right trajectory at the end of the season, would be about what I expect for them.
Yeah, listen, Jonathan Gannon coming over as the defensive-minded head coach made them a tough out last season, but the defense still wasn't great. 25th in yards, 31st in points allowed, and going to struggle to find pressure. You look at who they drafted this year in Darius Robinson, going to be great against the run, but I don't know how much he's going to immediately improve your ability to harass the quarterback. So defense is going to be a work in progress, but you've got a coach that's dedicated on that side of the ball. Offensively, I am just curious because all of the quotes coming out of camp, and again, it's early on here. We've just putting on pads in most camp. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy that we talked about being the most pro-ready prospect in college, and it seems like so far has come in and immediately earned the respect of the veterans with the way that he goes and approaches his work. So you put him in that room with Trey McBride, who led the team in every meaningful receiving category and seems to be one of the bright, young, budding tight end stars in the league right now, with an offensive line that added Jonah Williams from Cincinnati to try and shore things up a little bit. Hajalde Froholt at center was a big surprise star last year for them up front. And offensively, I'm just curious. They seem to quiet the noise around Kyler Murray in the back half of last season. You get him under center a little more, doing some things we didn't see him do with Cliff Kingsbury early in his career. And I'm a little bit bullish on what they could be offensively, Fitz, just because you've got an absolute game breaker in Marvin Harrison that changes the complexion of that offense for everybody else in the team.
I mean, I just can't stand people to get their jobs because of their dads. I'm kidding.
It's disgusting.
No, you're right. Marvin Harrison Jr., though, is, look, I said this when I voted for him for the Biletnikoff Award. The most impressive stat that he had in college to me was the number 0. And that's how many drops were credited to Marvin Harrison over the last 2 seasons combined. So you are talking about somebody that simply doesn't drop footballs. It is an absolute safety net. They used McBride as a safety net last year. 106 targets is a lot. They were just like, let's just get it to somebody we can trust. Marvin Harrison being able to do more is going to create more for McBride. I think you're right. By the way, fantasy football play, I think McBride is a great fantasy football play.
I was going to say double coverage going somewhere else, and now all of a sudden he gets to operate more like a normal tight end and not the number 1 wideout on a team. Look out, world. That could be where the Cardinals have their biggest impact this upcoming season. Coming up next, though, big impact. That means one thing, the New York Jets. Plenty of noise coming out of Jets camp. How much does it actually affect the season? Next.
to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield here in the Boston studios. Got Mike Golic Jr. and Jason Fitz here as well. Virtually, of course. Guys, gather around, because we're going to talk camp stories here. Gather around the little pretend fire as we talk about what happened yesterday. So, I say drama, you say Aaron Rodgers, okay? We always got something with our boy, Aaron Rodgers. So we discussed an on-field conversation between Garrett Wilson and Rodgers that happened, and here's what Wilson had to say about the exchange.
I mean, he's vocalizing he's pissed off. I know when we're getting our ass beat, I'm pissed off. You know, I may not vocalize it that way to the guys, but I'm pissed off too. So it's kind of a mutual feeling. It's like, I'm glad he said something. And it's not personal. I don't think anyone in this building takes it that way. It's like, all right, this is our leader right here. Obviously, he's not happy with what we're doing, so it can be a reminder for some of the guys. I think when you're out here in these hot practices and day 8, some guys go into survival mode and they forget about the detail and the fact of the matter that you got to win the drill, and they kind of just try and do their, I don't know, I don't want to say that, but I think y'all understand what I'm saying.
Garrett Wilson trying really hard not to step in it. He's like, oh, don't say the wrong thing here.
Yep.
What do we think about this situation? Obviously, like, Aaron Rodgers knows better than anybody. There's tons of cameras on him when he's out there.
Yeah, but in this instance, I actually don't think he could or should care, because this is the one spot where I'll say and agree with Aaron Rodgers, who we'll hear from shortly, about some of the other things that have gone on in camp with him. I think there are certain issues in the ways that Aaron Rodgers and parts of the Jets organization communicate right now, specifically his head coach. I don't think this issue with his wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, is an issue at all. Fitz, I've always said conflict is the love language of sports that allows results to happen faster. It's one of my favorite things about it is when you build up enough trust and respect with somebody, you can go out there and have really fiery, animated conversations at times because you're trying to work through a problem fast. You don't have time to wait around and make this happen. In the NFL, adjustments happen in between series. It's the old line. High school, you adjust on Monday. College, you adjust at halftime. In the NFL, you got to adjust in between plays and in between series to make things happen. And that means you have to have blunt, honest conversations. And I do believe Aaron Rodgers has the cachet, certainly, to voice his opinion on these things. But Garrett Wilson, who had over 1,000 yards last year with the Jets quarterback situation that we saw on display, is a guy who's already come in and shown enough to be able to go and talk about what he's seeing on the field. And those two guys working together through problems faster is good news, and I think totally normal, healthy stuff for the Jets.
People don't always understand what communication is like in that sort of a pressure cooker either. So everybody's trying to apply the way they communicate to the way athletes are supposed to communicate. And it's just a different situation. Mike, I honestly believe the world would be a better place if, like at concerts, there's certain concerts you go to, they take your phone and they put it in a sealed bag and you can't take any video, you lose it. I think the world would be a better place. Football would be better if when it came to training camp and practices, that's what they did for every single person that was in there. Because Aaron Rodgers, as much as I've been tough on some of the things Aaron Rodgers has said on a microphone on his different platforms, that's different than being at work. And at work, he has one objective, and that one objective is to get on the same page with Garrett Wilson. And to me, I have no problem with blunt communication from two people that, to your point, are in that environment. And that's just part of how it works. Like, what do we expect? That they're supposed to stand on the sideline and chum it up for a minute, and then we'll turn around and say they're not even taking it serious. It's a lose-lose situation for Aaron. It's a lose-lose situation for the Jets. And it's a fail that, frankly, it gets covered to this level. Lock all the phones, let guys work these things out, and let's see the actual result on the field when people don't have to worry about whether or not they're being filmed. If you and I were filmed during some of our production meetings on different shows, people would be appalled at some, like, it gets heat. That's just part of what happens when you're passionate about what you do. And there's a reason that certain areas in your life, you expect cameras, and certain areas you shouldn't have to.
I have screamed at some of my best friends in the name of accomplishing a task in a faster way when it comes to what you do in full pads. That's just how it goes. Hell, you're right. We've done it in this job before. I remember people used to marvel that my dad and Greeny, when they'd sit on the air and go at it over something, all of a sudden things would go off, the microphones would go off during the break, and it would be back to what you do in the next segment because, man, it understands we're trying to make something go here. And when you're trying to do that in this environment in particular, the crucible that is training camp, with all the factors Garrett Wilson just mentioned, it's infinitely understandable, and it's just a part of the cost of doing business in this job.
When one of the first times that you and I worked together, and you won't remember this, but I do because I was brand new in Bristol, and me, you, and your dad were working together on ESPN at the time. and the producer of the show had written a terrible tease, and I went to read it, and I butchered it, and it was awful. And I looked at the computer screen, and we went to break, and I looked at the computer screen, and I remember so vividly, I was like, man, that was a terrible tease. And your dad, without hesitation, who I didn't know particularly well and is a legend in this business, looked over and he said, nope, it came out of your mouth. And if it comes out of your mouth, then it's your responsibility. You need to figure out ways to protect yourself on those teases. You got to write them, you got to read them, and you got to be ready for it. It's part of the job. And we went to break, and I was like, oh my God, I'm getting yelled at by Mike Golic Sr. So I wrote the next tease, and I spent the rest of the commercial worrying about the next one. And I nailed the next one, and we went to break, and your dad was like, that was a good job. And that's just that's how guys that have been at that level communicate. And there isn't time when you got that little amount to sit there and be like, hey man, let me give you some advice. That's just not the way it works. Certainly your dad is somebody that I admire, and we work together all the time. I consider him a friend, right? So there's no hurt in that relationship. But if people had seen that out of the blue, they'd be like, oh man, he was really mean to the new guy. No, that's communication. And that works for certain areas, for certain groups, for certain people.
And as long as there's that agreed upon contract, you got to have the trust. I got to know that you're in it with me enough to take that feedback and not take it personal. That's part of healthy communication. And that's why I do have concerns about what we keep hearing from Rob Saleh and Aaron Rodgers when they talk about each other in front of the microphone. They're not huge things, but it's just come up enough to make me look at this sideways, because Aaron Rodgers got to the mic yesterday in addition to talking about what went on with Garrett Wilson and kind of much ado about nothing, that which I actually believe. He also talked about Rob Saleh's quote from the other day where Rob said, yeah, Aaron's not going to play in the first 2 preseason games, and then we'll see on the third. This was what Aaron Rodgers had to say in response to that news, talking to the media.
Yeah, I mean, that's Robert's decision. I've never told him I don't want to play in the preseason. There's a lot of thoughts about whether there's any particular gain from it. We used to play all the time. It wasn't even a question. We played, 10 to 15 the first one, and quarter and a half in the second one, and the third quarter in the third one, and then sometimes, Tennessee would always play their guys. Sometimes through the third quarter, we would play, maybe a series or two. Now nobody wants to play. They don't want to play their guys. It's different.
And Fitz, it just continues to be this back and forth that started with these two in the offseason, where Aaron Rodgers has the trip plan. Rob Saleh decides to make that public in a way that most people would deem ill-advisable. And now going to this, Rob makes the decision about that, and Aaron makes sure everyone knows, hey, I had no hand in this decision. That's all Rob. None of it's damning. I don't want to make it seem like any of this to me is, oh yeah, sell stock on the Jets right now for this. But all of this, when you're talking about the stuff that goes on in the offseason, in my mind, it's just a dress rehearsal for how you communicate on game day. We're all just trying to learn, hey, when the bullets start flying, what am I going to get out of the coaches that I work with? And for Aaron Rodgers, that's going to be Nathaniel Hackett. It's going to be the offensive coordinator. It's going to be all that in the immediacy. But with a quarterback of his station, your relationship with the head coach is more noteworthy than most. And it just seems like these two constantly seem to be talking around each other in public in ways that are weird to me.
Yeah, well, and this is far different than what we just talked about, because this is Aaron Rodgers stepping to a microphone where he knows everything he says is going to be parsed down to the word because of his own usage of words in the past. Everything is going to be overanalyzed because he's sitting in front of a microphone. There's a really simple answer to all of this. Coach speak should be a thing that is coached to everybody in the NFL. All Saleh has to say is we're keeping our preseason decisions to ourselves and avoid it, or say, no, he's not playing. And when Aaron Rodgers gets to the podium, a coach says you're not playing. I'm not playing. That's it. Whose decision was that? I'm not playing. Don't answer any of it. Because you're right. This does create a very weird, when we overanalyze everything he says by his own fault, now we're looking at it and saying, okay, well, what does all of this mean? And let's be real, Mike. The next time that the Jets as an organization handle absolute chaos well will be the first time that the Jets as an organization have handled absolute chaos well. So we're not even to the spot of absolute chaos. If this is what happens in the preseason when everybody's singing Kumbaya by the campfire, what happens if, God forbid, the Jets start 1-4? What are they going to say at the microphone then? I think that's the teetering part of this. This is interesting because it screams to me, to a coach and a quarterback, that are not really they're both smart enough to. They are choosing not to sit there and translate their words into ways that it will not get brought up by anybody else. They choose not to do that.
Yeah, and both of them have certainly been around long enough to know that. Rob Saleh now multiple years as the head coach in the biggest media market in the country, and Aaron Rodgers has been one of the stars in the sport forever. So again, I want to make it abundantly clear because the context gets robbed in a lot of these things. I'm not saying it's a huge problem now. I'm just saying this is something to keep an eye on, the communication style for these two. To your point, Jason, when things aren't easy in the offseason, when it's actually time to put the chips down and do the thing for real, that's going to be the interesting part for a Jets team that has a lot of questions, quite honestly, that are far bigger than the head coach and the quarterback on this team. Most of them are in front of the quarterback right now, trying to make sure that they can block for this guy and keep him upright. Jason, I want to head to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And Jesse, looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have probably one of the most interesting quarterback situations in the NFL based on what they did bargain bin hunting for Justin Fields and Russell Wilson this offseason. Got a little spicy yesterday.
Yeah, when you were at Rams camp, you said, you were like, hey, man, it would be cool to see a fight break out. And, the Steelers were like, let's deliver for GoJo here. So Justin Fields, a little bit of a late hit here on him. You can see the video. All right, they're playing. He gets hit a little bit late, goes down, and then big scuffle, right? Punch. I think I saw some punches being thrown. A lot of shoving. Shoving is a favorite. So the hit was a little late, but it's also, like you've been talking about, GoJo, probably that time of camp where guys are getting restless, and we've heard that narrative a little bit. I was laughing at the ref throwing the flag and then just backing out of the scene. But here's what Elandon Roberts had to say about the whole situation. He got some words in there.
Yeah, it was just a little tap, but the offense did what they supposed to do and whatnot, and you're always supposed to protect your quarterback. I think it's a real good thing. You even see the mentality of your offense, man. Protecting the quarterback and stuff like that, and I'm gonna stay away from the quarterback.
So what do you guys think? Was it a late hit, or is that just camp tempers? It's hot. It's just a fever dream out there. What's going on?
I mean, you're not supposed to touch the merchandise at quarterback. And now Pittsburgh's one of those organizations that doesn't do a true red jersey, which I saw people commenting before about training camp, but I'd shudder to think that this was a live drill, even though Justin Fields is a mobile enough quarterback that's a part of his game enough to where certainly he's going to be getting hit if he was ever on the field in the game. We've seen plenty of that with him as a runner. But man, in general in camp, you'll hear all the time, stay out of the cylinder when quarterbacks are in the pocket. I have seen some of the biggest ass chewings of my life when you get defensive players, especially young ones, that get too close to veteran quarterbacks and the guy you're going to need. Because the last thing on the earth a coach wants in training camp is a quarterback following through and breaking his thumb on some guy who's going to get Cut's helmet midway through training camp in the second week. It's a nightmare for everyone involved. And so usually stuff like this does not happen, especially now. This team is a little bit different. Both of these guys are new. Justin Fields is supposed to be the backup right now, the way that they've structured things there, even though he got a lot of first-team reps when Russell Wilson was on the shelf with that calf to start training camp. But in general, maybe not viewed in the same station as no one was going to touch Ben Roethlisberger when he was in camp for this team for all those years. I can tell you that much. So, yeah, Fitz, putting your hands on the merchandise when it comes to the quarterback, generally going to get somebody's hand up in your grill pretty quickly.
Just answer this for me, Mike. Why is it when big guys in pads shove each other, we react? But I don't know. I'm currently 158 pounds of glory, right? If I walk up to somebody else that's 158 pounds and we just start shoving each other, everybody's going to laugh at us. When football players shove each other, we're like, oh my God, emotions are why? Why, Mike? I don't understand why y'all hit each other when you're wearing helmets. I don't understand why you shove each other when basically you're just aggravated and there's no good that comes out. It's just two grown men shoving each other to me is still going to be laughable.
Well, Fitz, I'll say this. Why people care more, there's a reason they line up for Godzilla movies, because bigger is better, and it's a lot more fun to watch at that size. There's a reason Pacific Rim isn't played out on robots that fit on your table. Bigger is better when it comes to gigantic fights. We like heavyweights better in boxing for that same reason. There's just something magical about all that power, and I'm sorry, but even on your fitness journey, your tiny baby body just won't produce the same level of power that mine will. It's not your fault. It's God's fault. Take it up with him. But O-lineman in practice fighting cancer.
If you shove me, I go flying. If I shove you, you laugh at me. I understand that, Mike. I understand that.
Exactly. Talk to the big guy. But no, in this instance, hey man, it's your job to protect the quarterback. It's like the goalie purely in hockey or anything else, like, man, if anyone puts their hand on the merchandise, I promise, in the film session the next day, the last person you want to be is the guy that wasn't running towards the fray. Everyone's got to know you're down for the cause if things come to blows like that.
And also, not for nothing, I know that everybody presumes this is Russ's job at some point, but I'm not willing to say that Justin Fields doesn't win the job. So even if the concept is, you're shoving the backup quarterback, that still that very well could be your starter by the beginning of this. I think the Steelers are in a bit of a pickle coming into this season at the quarterback position, particularly because if Russ comes in and wins the job and then he's lights out, like you mentioned, they went bargain bin shopping. Okay, cool. But now what? Like now they've started the clock on eventually having to make a decision on what their long-term future looks like at quarterback. If it's Russ and he goes out and has a great year, is he going to be a $45 million a year guy to them at the end of the season? That seems drastic from where we are right now. If it's Justin Fields, are they going to pay him? Like, I think the Steelers are in an unenviable position of having two quarterbacks that they don't, even if it goes well, they could get stuck overpaying for somebody that's not worth it.
Hey, you know what? That would be a win for the Steelers. Because I'm sorry, post Ben Roethlisberger, they've been wandering around the desert trying to find this. They failed on a first-round pick that they drafted. So if they strike gold with one of these guys after bargain bin shopping, that's a win. That's like drafting a quarterback in the late rounds and then all of a sudden having him pop. Those are good problems to have, having competent quarterback play, which is the thing they're trying to find now.
You're telling me that if Russ has a Baker-like resurgence this year, that it's a win for them to bank on Russ being able to do that at 38 years old next season at $40 million a year? Like, I don't see a big win in it. Like, I think if you look at the
$40 million a year at this point is chump change in the quarterback market, right, man. The Rams getting Stafford for basically $40 million right now when everyone else is getting 55 and haven't accomplished nearly what those guys have in their career. Hell yeah, that's a win.
No, see, the problem here is Russ is cooked. And even if he has a good year this year, I don't believe that Russ can be a long-term quarterback. So, like, yeah, maybe anybody can have a Geno Smith year. Anybody can have a Baker Mayfield year, and we love that. I just don't think as an organization, that puts you in a situation where you should even remotely consider a long-term deal for somebody that I just don't think has a lot left in the tank. So Justin Fields winning the job is better for the long-term future of the organization because at least then they have a shot to figure out if they've really got a quarterback they can bank on for future years.
Oh, listen, I want to be clear. I agree with you there. Having the young quarterback that's just finishing up his rookie deal pop instead of the 35-year-old quarterback who is definitely on the back half and the worst half of a Hall of Fame career would 100% be the win. And it is interesting now because Justin Fields got a lot more first-team action than anyone was preparing for in this camp. Like Russell, it's the butterfly effect in NFL training camp extraordinaire, where Russell Wilson tweaks a calf doing the conditioning test, and now all of a sudden Justin Fields gets the opportunity and goes out there and by all accounts seems to have made the most of those reps. I'm not saying he's going to supplant it because they seem pretty dead set on that, and Tomlin's a loyal guy. We've seen the way that organization operates. I won't be surprised to see Russ get the first-team reps starting this season, but they don't owe him much. And if the Steelers are smart, which I believe they are, especially with Arthur Smith, who's good at the quarterback run game stuff and has used mobile guys well, hey, man, having some red zone stuff for Justin Fields, who was one of the best runners, period, in the NFL last year, seems like it would be good business in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree with that totally. And look, I'm still not willing to give up on Justin Fields, the quarterback. I don't know that he's going to be great, but can he be pretty good? Maybe. Can they give him stability? I think Arthur Smith failed as a head coach with the Atlanta Falcons. That's the end of that statement. Stop. The next statement, Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, did some really nice things with the Titans for several years. And you're right, he did those things with really mobile quarterback play, right? Like that's something he thrives in. So I think there's a system match here that can make a lot of sense for Justin Fields. I wouldn't be surprised at all by the time we actually hit the regular season, if not week one by October, I think Justin Fields is the starting quarterback of the Steelers. I think Justin Fields turns out to be pretty good. And then the Steelers have to make a decision on how much pretty good is worth. But I'd rather invest pretty good on a young guy thinking I can develop him than invest pretty good on an old guy that I've seen a bunch and I might just have gotten lucky that I got one pretty good year out of him.
Yeah, no question. I think that would be the win for them there. It'll be curious in this offense, and I know there are a lot of jokes about Arthur Smith and what he did to some of the weapons in Atlanta last year, the young talent they had, top 10 talent on that roster, but who they are going to get the ball to outside of Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris in the backfield, it's George Pickens and in the wide receiver room, Pat Freiermuth at tight end, but Deontay Johnson out the door. They're still looking to supplement that group around those quarterbacks as they do try and figure out their quarterback of the future, the thing they still haven't been able to do post Big Ben in Pittsburgh. That plenty of the exciting news coming out of training camp in the AFC North, which we expect to be a juggernaut division there. Coming up next, let's take a look a little bit at the college level with a big star showing up and money coming out to some premier beef along the lines of scrimmage in the NFL. Next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Jason Fitz, Jesse Cofield. And guys, we've got large excellence on display this morning. Beef on the timeline, being paid handsomely for going out there and fighting the good fight. New money, Tristan Wirfs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers star offensive tackle, signs now the richest offensive line contract in NFL history, a 5-year, $140.63 million contract extension that, according to Adam Schefter at ESPN, makes him the highest paid offensive tackle in NFL history. The deal includes $88.24 million guaranteed, according to a source, which is the most guaranteed money for any offensive tackle in the league, just surpassing Penei Sewell, who had, in all intents and purposes, $85 million guaranteed in the contract that he signed earlier this offseason. So Fitz, not a huge surprise here. Tristan Wirfs managed to switch sides successfully this year, but even since coming into the team, around Tom Brady, being one of the young players tasked with protecting the GOAT early on, has lived up to the billing in every sense of the word for a guy that was very highly drafted coming out of Iowa.
This is a no-brainer, and I want to remind everybody that there are not currently, in my opinion, 32 starting caliber left and right tackles in the NFL, right? Like, so at some point, when you have one, you have to pay that guy. It doesn't matter what it costs. You have to pay that guy, because we will be talking about this by week 8 of the season, how many teams have dreadful tackle play on one side or the other that is an absolute liability for your football team. So to me, one of the biggest no-brainers is harder and harder. It's becoming, and we've talked about this, Mike, it's becoming harder and harder to find great offensive line talent coming out at the college level, which is why we saw a run on some of it this year. Like, when you have a good class, you have to capitalize on it, because we are seeing more and more draft busts, less and less development. In my opinion, if you've got a guy on the left or right side, I don't care anymore. If you got a guy on the left or the right side and they're playing at a really high level, it doesn't matter what the check is, you write it.
100%, especially for an offensive line where he's the elder statesman, he's the leader on a group that's turned over so much of the talent from the identity, led by Ryan Jensen and those angry gingers along the interior of the Super Bowl line, has now given way to Tristan Wirfs being the guy that you count on there. And to your point, Fitz, about paying it, I think you pay rare body types and skill sets as well. Offensive line is the most unnatural skill set on the field. It's the most learned. You're going backwards to block the best athletes in the world, doing a bunch of learned behavior. Tristan Wirfs doing it with a set of gifts you're not going to find everywhere else. At Iowa, they called him the boogeyman in the weight room because he was essentially shattering every weight room record that they had for the Iowa football team, which, to your point, is one of the pedigree programs when it comes to offensive line. Say what you want about what Brian Ferentz' offense became, what him and Kirk Ferentz have done developing that position in particular at that university for most of my adult lifetime has been one of the true examples of blue chip stock. And Tristan Wirfs took all those gifts where, coming out of college, I remember I wasn't sure. At times in college, it didn't seem like the gifts always translated the way you expected to on the field. He came to the NFL and continued to put it together in a way that has now made him one of the best in the league and certainly deservedly one of the highest paid.
So the question is, how long did it take for that tweet from Adam Schefter to be sent to the 49ers by Trent Williams camps with just, you up? Like, I mean, that's all. Like, if you're Trent, you're just, you up? You seeing this? Like, let's talk, boys, because like the market is set, and whatever the market is, and this is where we talk about it all the time with CD, and we talk about it all the time with Dak, but like this is the same situation for the 49ers. The market is going to be reset by Trent Williams. There is no doubt about it. So now that another contract has come in that has reset the market, that just upped the price of what the 49ers are going to have to deal with right now in order to get him in camp.
I will be curious about that because the difference is Trent Williams is 36 years old. Like Penei Sewell's 23. Penei Sewell's 23 years old. God, that's insane. Tristan Wirfs is 25. It's a different timeline for all these guys. So the structure of the Trent Williams deal is going to be interesting to me because the guy's not going to play forever, even if he is a gold jacket waiting to happen. Still one of the best performers at his position. There's no question about any of that, but I do just wonder how the age is going to affect the way that deal looks.
And the age is huge, but he's probably, I mean, let's be real, other than for salary cap reasons, he's not looking for a 4-year deal, right? Like he's looking to get a massive payday right now. So the annual average value per year has been set. And now if I'm Trent's camp, I'm coming in and saying, great. We now know that we want 2 years and we want more than Wirfs average for 2 years. Like that's, so yes, you're right. Age plays part of it, but Trent's still playing at an incredibly high level. They still desperately need him. And now all he can do is turn around and say, yeah, this old guy wants to get paid. I want to get the bag twice. Give me 2 years of that money.
Yeah, right now, Trent Williams averaging $23 million a year on his current deal. Penei Sewell making $28 million a year on his, and now certainly Tristan Wirfs going above and beyond and adding to the money pile there. So it's going to make the price go up. How it'll look will be important, but there's no doubt it does underscore the importance of you need to get that guy back into camp. I saw our buddy Marshall Newhouse say the other day that could be the most important player on their offense, especially given who their quarterback is and his physical limitations. And so I think being sensitive to that and getting that done for the 49ers. Ayuk is important. Trent Williams is vital. And I think you've got to recognize the difference in there as you go about getting these deals done. Let's go to the college level here now, Jesse. We've got guys reporting to camp in college football. The NFL's been going on for a little bit. College on a bit of tape delay. But we kind of had to do a double take on whether or not it was college or pro for one camp yesterday.
Yeah, Dylan Raiola arriving in Nebraska looking exactly like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, exactly like him. If you showed me this picture and you told me that was Patrick Mahomes, I would believe you, okay, in a second. Now, we haven't heard him speak. Does he sound like a Muppet too? I don't know. But Dylan Raiola just dressing up just like Patrick Mahomes, okay? It made the rounds on Twitter. Everybody was loving it. You know, he made a splash, guys, that's for sure, right? He's a 5-star recruit, right? Like, likely to start week 1 here. So what do you rate this move? Because you came in looking like Patrick Mahomes. Are you going to play like him?
So, yeah, as Jesse mentioned, this is the biggest recruit Nebraska's had in quite some time. He's a legacy player there for Matt Rule. This is a coup. And for Dylan Raiola, this is interesting. Jason, I would venture to bet, because we heard the other day Tua Tagovailoa coming out after he gets his contract in Miami was responding to a dare from his offensive coordinator to do that show me the money bit on the microphone in front of fans. I would have to imagine there's a generation of kids all getting that Mahomes haircut right now. It's insanely popular in part because of Patrick. You see everyone with it. So I'm not surprised that Dylan's been rocking that. But there is enough of the bones there that are kind of similar to where I have to imagine some of his teammates have made that comment about him kind of looking like Patrick. This smells like a dare to me. I'll be curious if we hear more about it.
Yeah, and by the way, you're right. When I was down in Jacksonville at the end of June for a high school football camp, it was amazing. I think every kid, it's just everybody has the Mahomes haircut, and they're all wearing the same sunglasses. And I was like, okay, this is seeped into pop culture at this point, So I get that, but yeah, this definitely feels like somebody put him up to it. I mean, but at the same time, I was watching SportsCenter late last night, and they were running rips that compared Raiola's release to Mahomes' release. Like, this is going to become a cultural phenomenon. So in a world of branding yourself, in a world of making sure the world knows who you are from the minute you walk in, I kind of understand the strategy on this. Like, he's making sure people know exactly who he is. People are going to have all eyes on him coming into this year. He's about to be a phenom.
GoJo, is Dylan Raiola having a brat summer?
That is definitely a brat move from Dylan Raiola. Yes, we can establish that and stamp it firmly. That was a brat entrance to training camp. But the fact that we have an entrance to training camp at all, the fact that we're getting Getty Images professional shots of college players rolling up to training camp fits kind of furthers your point of how different this world has become for a lot of these players. And for Dylan Raiola, listen, comparison can be the thief of joy, or in his case, it can actually deliver joy. You don't want the comparison to Mahomes. You don't want that right out of the gate. That's not fair to anybody, and that'll crush a lot of dreams. But Dylan Raiola walking in compared to what Nebraska had at quarterback last year with the rotation of guys that weren't able to get the job done can absolutely make Dylan Raiola look like the savior this year. I think he's got a really good chance to just go in and start right away and be an immediate upgrade over whatever they had last season on a team that, listen's got the schedule and has got a defense up front that could make them interesting. Like, definitely a bowl team this year, I think, fits, and anything beyond that would be gravy.
Yeah, but when you're talking about the level of eyeballs that have come with this recruit, like, this is everything for Matt Rule. Like, Matt Rule's job depends on Raiola being able to come in and play at a high level, because there are no excuses. When you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country day one coming in and starting, the expectations will be lofty, and it's a tougher world out there than ever in college football. So I think it's interesting that there's as much pressure on the team and the program as there is on the player to be able to perform out of the gates.
Yeah, but Matt Rule is a guy who has traditionally performed very well in his second year and usually coming off worse season ones, 5-7 last year. We'll see what the Huskers have in store for this year. Coming up next, we'll take a look back at Team USA men's basketball and more Minutes Mania next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield here in the studio. Got Mike Golic Jr. and Jason Fitz. Guys, it is time for us to jump into our Liquid IV Olympic recap. If hydrating were an Olympic sport, you would win gold. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code GoJo at checkout. So USA added another gold to the medal count. So a lot of cool stuff going on for the U.S. Basketball. Let's talk about that. Beating Team South Sudan. The spread pretty big there. It ended up being a little bit closer than people thought it was going to be. 103-86, the final there. So Senior's not here for me to say, look at that. All right. Team Sudan making it a little closer than people thought it would be. But guys, Tatum, right? He gets his minutes. Everybody was talking about this. We were talking about this. He gets 17 minutes. But then Joel Embiid, how many does he get? Okay, did not get off the bench. So now is there going to be another flurry of drama about this? What do we think about how Steve Kerr is managing his lineups?
I think it's working pretty well considering they're boat racing everyone right now. They've scored over 100 points in both of these games. Yes, South Sudan covered the number yesterday in a way that me and Dad both thought would go opposite, testament to them. South Sudan, we've talked about what a great story they are in this. But Fitz, this has been the dumbest storyline so far of the Olympics, is us worrying about minutes on a super team as they've gone out and accomplished at a high level. Yes, I understand the game against South Sudan was close early on in the lead up, but now since the games have started mattering in pool play, and certainly when we get to the knockout round, until it really negative affects us, and I understand that's resulting to an extent, but it seems like Steve Kerr has gotten the best out of a lot of these lineups and understanding, hey, in this game, you need a little bit more speed on the wings. That's why he said, hey, Jason Tatum's going to play plenty in this game, but Joel Embiid wasn't going to, and they got more of those speedy wings out there. Bam Adebayo was great for them from the center spot coming off the bench, and round we go. So maybe now after this, now that people in Boston see this wasn't an attack on their precious angel Jason Tatum, maybe we can all calm down about this.
Look, Mike, if anybody watches our Olympic coverage on Yahoo Sports, my bold prediction after the Tatum incident was that somebody else would get no minutes in game 2 and that Tatum would get plenty of minutes. Like, Steve Kerr's just trolling us at this point. Now the way you end the conversation about Tatum is you just make sure somebody else, like you at that point, you sit down in the locker room, you're like, somebody's got to get no minutes, so we just get everybody to shut up. Who wants the night off? Like, it just feels so natural to me at this point that they're going to do this as long as they want to do this so that we stop talking about who did and didn't play. I feel like Kerr is playing chess while we're all playing checkers. And by the way, you are right about one thing. You know what we're not going to remember about this team in 10, 15, 20 years? Who played or who didn't play. You know what we are going to remember? Whether or not they won the gold in dominating fashion. That's all that matters. So in this immediate society that we live in where we have to fill 24-hour news networks arguing about everything, sure, guys not getting minutes matters. But will it matter in 10 years? The answer to that is no. So frankly, this is Kerr just absolutely, we should start putting a little side action on who's not going to get any minutes in the next game, because I don't think this is going to stop.
Yeah, Brian Windhorst, who has been getting crap from all the players over there anytime he talks about them, said Bam Adebayo gave him grief for speculating that maybe Bam would be the guy that lost out on minutes against South Sudan, and instead Bam ends up leading all scorers with 18 off the bench and playing a great game. But yeah, Fitz, Steve Kerr's not trolling. Steve Kerr is not playing 4D chess. He's coaching basketball. He's coaching to win basketball games with a roster that's loaded up with more talent than God. And there's guys that maybe other people wouldn't have expected, like the whole Jaylen Brown thing. You've seen Drew Holiday and Derek White, both at different junctures, look like two of the best players on Team USA. Derek White was one of 6 guys in double figures in this last game. Drew Holiday in the first game against Serbia went off and had himself a double-digit outing. So he's getting the best out of these guys, trying to fit these pieces around, some of which are redundant skill set wise, and some of which are the greatest all time. Kevin Durant is coming off the bench right now. If you want to talk about people needing to swallow their pride and just do whatever it takes, Kevin Durant is the most accomplished player in the history of men's Olympic basketball in the U.S., and he's coming off the bench because that's what it takes right now, and that's what the team needs. So everyone else can probably chill.
Can we just have taken a few of those guys and put them on the 3-on-3 basketball team instead? Because, let's be honest, our 3x3 team just sucks. And, Jimmer Fredette being the star of it is not going to give anybody a lot of hope. I'm watching guys not get minutes. I'm thinking, man, at least, give me some good pickup basketball 3-on-3 style. Let's win a gold over there, too. Spread the talent out more.
Yeah, I was going to say Fitz, the guy that you're going to be at the concert with tonight in Darius Rucker. I saw him tweet that yesterday. Why don't we have any current NBA guys on the 3-on-3 roster? I understand for a while that used to be what we do in a lot of Olympic sports in general, was just send the college players over because it was supposed to be about all the aw shuck stuff in competition. But we don't like losing stuff. And I do wonder, because we were coming off the World Basketball, the FIBA stuff last summer, where Team USA, led by Anthony Edwards and company, didn't have the showing that we wanted. And so LeBron and Steph got on the horn and said, get the Avengers together. We're about to go over here and bleep stuff up. And now we have this team that's so good that we've got all-stars losing out on minutes and going for goose eggs in the minutes department, and everybody wails and gnashes their teeth. I wonder if we're going to get some micro version of that for Team USA on the 3x3 circuit.
We should. By the way, you mentioned the all-stars. Like, let's be honest. We've got future basketball Hall of Famers that are not playing minutes. Like, that's just, when you think about it that way, that's just wild to me. That's how stacked the roster is. Yeah, it seems like there would be a better way to spread it all out. But ultimately, again, not to oversimplify here, but the rest of the world has gotten so much better at the games, particularly with basketball. There's this part of me that says, hey, this is a life of luxury right now. Let's appreciate it. And then when we get to games that we actually need the depth, if that happens, it's great to have it. In the meantime, in Kerr, we trust. And really, as long as there's a gold medal, who cares whose feelings are hurt along the way? I support all of that, Mike. I support at some point just the concept of, like, if we're winning by 20 points, then I don't really care how we got there.
No, exactly. So we're getting out of pool play soon. We'll get to the knockout round when this stuff will get even more dire, and these decisions will probably be even more scrutinized, and it won't freaking matter because they're getting the job done in this. So congratulations to the Team USA men's basketball team for so far, again, outside of that one scare with South Sudan, going out and living up to the lofty expectations that we have set for them against a Serbian team led by the best player in the world, the team from South Sudan that certainly played outside of their means, but up to the ability from some former NBA guys there as well. So Mike, that group struggling a little. Go ahead, Jason.
West Coast guy. I got to ask you this. Are you watching them live or are you watching them at night? Because, like, I wake up early in the morning anyway. Like, my body just wakes up now stupid early. So I get up, and I love the fact that I'm, like, putting on Cold Tone at 6 in the morning. I'm like, let's just go, right? Like, I'm watching all morning. And then we get to the afternoon, and the results are already known. Are you still watching even though you know how it plays out?
Oh, yeah, I can know how a story ends and still want to enjoy the journey of it and see how it went down here. Plus, I'm dumb enough to, like, after a while when I start watching, this is my favorite thing I used to do all the time, a little trick out there, because so many books become movies. I like to, whether I come to it, usually I get the movie first, quite honestly, but if a movie's so good, like Silver Linings Playbook that came out years ago with Bradley Cooper, I saw that movie and I was like, this is so good. There's a book. Give me that. I waited a little while, waited long enough to where I was going to forget the nuts and bolts plot of the movie and then just go back and be able to join the book. I'm doing that with Station 11 from HBO. That was a great series that I enjoyed, that I found out there was a book, and I've waited long enough to where I forgot the plot of all that stuff, and now I'm going to go back and the book is going to be fresh and new. Eventually, watching a basketball game, I'm going to forget the specifics of the outcome, and I'm just going to get lost in the game because I'm an idiot.
I'm a little worried about your memory, to be honest.
I mean,
what do you mean? You're just seeing movies and just, like, completely forgetting the plot a few months later?
I mean,
yeah, you guys don't?
Look, I take a lot of edibles, so of course I forget it. Like, that's just part of my charm. I don't remember. I mean, Mike knows this. Movies I've seen hundreds of times that I try to quote, I get it just wrong enough to piss Mike off every day. Like, I don't remember plots. I don't remember characters. I don't remember names. I'm terrible at all of this.
This is like a universal man thing, because, like, we're watching House of the Dragon. My husband will be like, "Wait, what happened last season?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You guys just forget stuff."
No, I need the previously on in the first 3 minutes of a show. I need previously on to recap me. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that now.
I was going to say, and they do that for a reason, because there's a lot more people like us, especially with a show that's as lore dense as Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. There's enough. If you can tell me you remember all those damn names, be my guest and recite them now. Because we're all talking about hair color and this and that and the other. There's no way we can be expected.
Major plot points. Like, I'm not forgetting major plot points.
Yeah, well, you know what? Coming up next, let's get to a major plot point for Team USA. The Candyman's coming to feed the troops next. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you miss us or any of our great guests, shout out to Nicole Auerbach, senior writer over at The Athletic in Paris, covering Olympic swimming for The Athletic. You can check that out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Thanks, as always, to our buddy Jason Fitz. You can check out all his great work over at Yahoo Sports, hosting and covering college football, the NFL, the NBA, the Olympics, you name it. He's spouting off takes about it, kind enough to give us some time out of here today. Guys, let's get to this and start things off. Team USA basketball apparently has a candy man. We've spent so much time focusing on minuscule things like minutes and who's actually on the court, where video surfaced yesterday of this guy carrying a plastic bin full of candy over to the court. Now, I will say this, not all that uncommon practice. One of my jobs, speaking of being in training camp right now, being a rookie offensive lineman, was going over and being in charge of filling up the candy bucket that was in the offensive line room. We would have to go make the run to Walmart or the grocery store and get the candy that we were told by the vets to bring over there. Now, shout out to Dave DeCastro, who was a veteran at the time, who gave us his credit card so that none of the rookies who weren't making bleep for money would actually have to pay for it. But this is not all that uncommon, so quick, usable energy getting ready to do it. Fitz, I'm sure you guys had candy on the tour bus for just such a reason.
No, not really. No, there wasn't a lot of candy on the road. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, Mike. Like, it just was. I know. Like the hardest thing for me when I first started touring is like I was a road trip snack guy, so I'd always get like different like Mike and Ike's and Spice Drops, all of the like my favorite gummy candies, and I would eat them tirelessly when I was making road trips. And I realized about 3 weeks into living on a tour bus that every day is a road trip. And you're like, well, that's going to make me fat. But Mike, here's the real like we're bearing the lead here. Have you found your into being a part of the Olympics in 2024? Like, how does Mike Golic Jr. apply to be the Team USA official candy man? And for the team, I mean, it's in LA. You're in LA. They wouldn't have to pay any travel expenses. You would be an actual Olympian. And let's be honest, it's closest you'll ever get to being that. This is your real shot at helping your country, Mike. Like this, we need to start a movement. Mike, for the Olympics, is Candyman in 2024.
I want a medal for it. Like they talked about the horses deserve to get a medal and all the equestrian stuff. I want a medal if I'm providing this candy, because I'm not going to lie. I'm sure that guy's making runs and doing his best, whoever the candy man or woman is here, but I'm a connoisseur. I'm like a sommelier for this. I'm going to curate the best candy experience humanly possible for these athletes to try and get a worldly view of the games that'll be in their home country for Team USA. So I'm providing a valuable service based on my wealth of knowledge and experience. The least they can do is give me a gold medal.
Yeah, they're going to love that freaky red bean paste Kit Kat thing you're into. They're going to be like, what is this?
It's just a nice little taste that's a little, just like 1 or 2 standard deviation points off the normal Kit Kat flavor.
Yeah, you'll go viral because they'll be spitting that out. Blech.
Never mind, Mike. You can't be the candy man anymore. I'm undercutting you. I'll do it for free gear. Give me all the free Olympics gear we have from LA, and I'll do it. I've already undercut Mike. You know what? I'll just watch his Twitter. I'll steal his candy takes. I'll fill the bucket. There we go.
Guys, he's going to talk too much. His voice is real high-pitched. I at least still look like an athlete. Jason Fitz looks like Honey, I Shrunk the Athletes and got him into the game. So you guys don't want that around cramping your style in the games. You want me, I'm going to get in where I fit in. I'm going to slide you that candy like it's a $20 bill, and we're going to keep this thing moving.
Maybe we could do it together, Mike. Instead of dividing and conquering, maybe we do it together. We could each deliver the candy. I feel like we're on to something here. Like the Candy Boys? I don't know. Like maybe a little side hustle.
Yes, the Candy Boys. Yep, that's what it is. The Candy Boys.
That's definitely what it is. Jesse, that duo might die on the vine, but let's get to an iconic duo that we've seen pop up to become Olympic heroes during this games recently.
I don't know. The Candy Boys seems like a pretty iconic duo. Not as iconic, however, as the Italian gymnast Giorgia Villa, and I'm probably not saying that right, and cheese. That's right. I said it. Cheese, Parmesan cheese, Parmigiano Reggiano to be specific, okay? So she's sponsored by the cheese, and she regularly has been posting pics. This is a professional photo shoot of her with wheels of cheese. I mean, it hurts to see somebody else living your dream, but here we are, guys. This is absolutely incredible. The Italians have been calling her an Italian hero because she's not just a gymnast, but she's representing cheese as well.
Yeah, so she won bronze at the 2019 World Championships, as well as then the 2022 Mediterranean Games, the 2022 Euro Championships, and has been sponsored by Parmigiano-Reggiano since 2021. So she's a veteran of the cheese game. She's so accomplished that, and Fitz, this is when I feel like I know you've made it, because in the dairy world, we've seen the Got Milk ads for years had this cultural cachet in America where people would do the milk mustache, and just the idea of being sponsored by milk, like not a specific brand or anything, but milk was always wild to me that we had to promo that. Obviously, Big Milk had their claws and a lot of money to go out there and lobby to make that happen. I'm happy to support Big Cheese, though. This is incredible, and the full wheel is such a nice aesthetic. Everyone should love this.
Yeah, no, like, especially if you ever go to one of the pasta places where they drop the pasta in the thing of cheese and they spin it around, and then, but like, that hits on a different level. And it also reminds me, Mike, that I haven't had cheese in months. And it's like, of all the things I've had to give up in this process, I think cheese might be the one that hurts my soul the most, because I could eat it every day. Like, I could eat cheese every day and be very happy. Haven't had it in months, and now I'm very hungry. So thank you.
I do eat cheese every day. That's sad.
Thank you.
Really sad.
Tell me more. Go ahead. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, amazing.
I had a cheese board last night. Good God Almighty. There's nothing like it. They had that phrase that nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. That's the biggest lie that's ever been told. Cheese is like at the bare minimum number 2 on the list of thing that tastes way better than skinny feels.
Have you ever had a triple cream brie? Okay, it tastes a lot better than skinny. Yeah.
Oh, I rarely say hate, but right now I think I hate both of you. And yeah, like I want to go get like a thing of extra sharp cheddar and just like eat my feelings. I could eat an entire block of it right now, but I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps and be proud of myself.
You do both.
Shout out to the homie Ben Solak, who's a routine consumer of late night cheese. Just when you need, you know what it is? It's a warm embrace for you here. Like, clearly in this one here, Georgia is embracing the wheel of cheese in the pictures that we saw, but really it's cheese that's there for us in those moments where you're a little stressed out. You need to take the edge off. And who wants 3 fingers of scotch, actually? Like, I know Mad Men made that popular for us to all feel like, oh yeah, 1950s, I'm supposed to come over and have scotch decanting and just pour that into a glass. Why do that when I could just rip off some cheese right out of the fridge? I used to, as a kid, we used to have those Kraft singles that definitely aren't real cheese but come in the individual packets. I used to just walk by the fridge, take a couple of those, pop those open, and just go raw dog some cheese. It was great.
Oh, yeah. Like, I used to take the singles, eat a couple, and then put a couple in between white bread, microwave it, grilled. Like, I'm not taking the time to grill my cheese. I'm just microwaving it, and then I'm slamming that white bread and crap. Like, that's how you know, A, you grew up poor, and B, you were a fat kid. Like, if you're just slamming white bread and Kraft singles or generic Kraft singles in my case, oh, God. I'm going to fall off the healthy wagon today. This is too much.
This is the end right here. Let's save Jessie from her discuss of our Kraft single consumption and get to the third, a viral moment from training camp that everyone can appreciate. CJ Gardner-Johnson putting on for the boys and getting them out of some work.
Yeah, you guys are uncultured swine with that disgusting Kraft cheese. But anyway, Kraft, if you want to sponsor us, I love your cheese. But CJ Gardner-Johnson, like you said, he had a chance to cancel a team meeting. He just had to hit a shot. He hits it. No meeting. Look at this. The crowd goes wild. Hey, did you guys ever had an experience like that, like in a class or something, where the teacher's like, if someone hits this, we're not going to have a pop quiz or something?
Well, no, what we used to do at practice at the end of like getting out of sprints, because a lot of times you would do conditioning after practice, is everyone's favorite thing, and one of the great viral moment producers of our lifetime, is you have offensive and defensive linemen go back and field punts. And usually there'd be a contest between the two, and then coach would be like, all right, if so-and-so catches this, we're not doing gassers after practice. And I promise you, in the middle of training camp, even getting out of a meeting like that is manna from heaven. You're waiting around wondering when that doggy bone from the coaches is coming, and right there, CJ Gardner-Johnson just endeared himself to the entire rest of the roster.
Overreaction. It's a meeting. Like, it's not sprints, it's a meeting. Oh my God, I'm so glad. What, an hour meeting that they were going to sit in there and go over some things, and you're reacting like that? Man, no, it's too much. It's too much. The meetings aren't that hard. Get over yourselves.
Hey, man, the desperation that comes in, even a week into training camp, when you already start to lose track of the days, to just get another hour to yourself to go do anything but listen to the coaches install this play for the 100th time again, especially here at Vet. You take that and you run with it. We hope you take this show and run with it. If you want to, download, subscribe, rate, and review us, then leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. Talk to you guys tomorrow.